How does one country influence the most critical oil route on the planet without actually owning it? Every day, a significant portion of the world's energy supply moves through a narrow corridor of water known as the Strait of Hormuz. It connects the Persian Gulf to the open ocean. It is governed by international maritime law, and it is patrolled by some of the most powerful navies on Earth. On paper, it is one of the most secure and regulated waterways in the world. But in practice, it is something else entirely. Because a disruption here doesn't stay local. It moves through global markets almost instantly, affecting oil prices, trade flows, and the cost of energy far beyond the region itself. And yet, despite all of that, Iran remains the single most influential actor in that space. Not because it controls the strait on paper, but because it can control what happens inside it. Because in this region, control isn't defined by ownership. It's defined by the ability to disrupt, delay, and deny access at will. And the system that makes this possible is far more calculated than it appears. Because Iran's position in the Strait of Hormuz is not accidental. It is the product of geography, long-term strategic adaptation, and decades of pressure shaping how power is exercised in this region. And what makes it difficult to change is not just one factor. It's how all of them reinforce each other. Because first, there is the geographic reality that makes disruption not just possible, but structurally easy. Then, there is the military system, built specifically to survive pressure from far stronger conventional forces. And finally, there is a deeper strategic logic, one shaped by history, that makes this position extremely difficult to dislodge without triggering wider consequences. So to understand why this balance has remained intact for so long, you have to look at how each layer locks into the next. The Strait of Hormuz is not just important, it is structurally critical. At its narrowest point, it compresses global energy flows into a single maritime corridor. Shipping lanes are tightly regulated, forcing massive oil tankers to move through predictable paths only a few miles wide. In practical terms, this does something important. It removes randomness. Every vessel entering the strait follows a route that is visible, predictable, and geographically constrained. And that alone changes the nature of power in the region. Because Iran sits directly along the northern coastline. From this position, it doesn't just observe the strait, it overlooks it. Its territory spans the entire northern edge, reinforced by islands that extend its operational reach deeper into the waterway itself. So what exists here is not a single point of control, but overlapping zones of influence. Missile systems, drones, coastal surveillance, naval assets, all operating within range of the same narrow corridor. Which means any vessel passing through is not just traveling through international waters. It is entering an environment where it is continuously visible, continuously trackable, and potentially within reach. But the key point is not direct control. It is psychological and operational pressure. Because Iran does not need to stop every ship. It does not need to dominate the strait in a conventional sense. It only needs to introduce uncertainty into a system that depends on absolute predictability. And in global energy transport, uncertainty is not a minor disruption. It is a trigger. A single incident, a single escalation, a single perceived threat. That is often enough to increase insurance premiums, delay shipments, and force shipping operators to reassess routing decisions in real time. You can see it in practice. A tanker slows before entering the strait. Escort protocols tighten. Risk calculations shift. Markets react before anything even happens. And there are no easy alternatives. Some pipelines bypass parts of the flow, but not at the scale required to replace the strait. Infrastructure limitations and geography lock global energy transport into this corridor, which means a large portion of the world's oil supply depends on a passage that cannot realistically be substituted, and can always be influenced by the same actor positioned along its edge. But geography alone does not explain persistence, because geography can be challenged. What makes Iran far more difficult to remove is the system it has built around that geography. A system designed not for dominance, but for denial. Often described as a MOSAIC defense, Iran's military structure avoids the single point of failure that defines most conventional forces. Instead of concentrating capability into large, high-value targets, it disperses it across smaller, semi-independent units spread across different layers of command and terrain. These units operate with a degree of autonomy. They do not depend on constant centralized coordination to function. And that single design choice changes the nature of engagement entirely, because it removes what most modern militaries rely on: decapitation. There is no single command center whose removal collapses the system, no central node whose destruction ends operational capacity. Instead, pressure is absorbed across multiple points, and the system continues functioning, even under sustained disruption. This is reinforced by an asymmetric naval doctrine. Iran does not attempt to match larger naval forces in conventional terms. It does not compete ship for ship or fleet for fleet. Instead, it builds systems designed to complicate control of space itself. Fast attack craft, mobile missile platforms, naval mines, coastal batteries. Individually, none of these redefine naval power, but together they reshape the environment. Fast-moving boats operate in swarms, forcing larger vessels into defensive postures rather than offensive control. Naval mines introduce uncertainty beneath the surface, turning open water into a calculated risk zone. Missile systems positioned along the coastline or concealed within terrain create overlapping angles of potential engagement. The objective is not a decisive battle, it is operational friction, to make movement slower, riskier, more expensive, and ultimately less predictable. That effect is amplified by geography. Iran's coastline is not a flat defensive line. It is layered, elevated, and irregular, which allows mobile systems to reposition, conceal, and re-emerge in different locations. Targeting becomes less about eliminating assets, and more about chasing a constantly shifting network. And even when parts of that network are degraded, the system does not collapse, because it was never designed around permanent assets in the first place. It was designed around continuity. But the most overlooked layer of this structure is not military at all. It is economic. Because in the Strait of Hormuz, disruption does not need to be sustained to be effective. It only needs to be credible. Even brief instability can trigger immediate global reactions. Shipping companies reassess routes in real time. Insurance premiums adjust to perceived risk almost instantly. And energy markets begin pricing uncertainty before physical consequences even materialize. Prices move not because supply has fully changed, but because of expectation. Which means influence here is not limited to physical control. It extends into financial systems that react to perception as much as reality. And that creates a dual pressure system. Military disruption on one side, economic volatility on the other hand. Together, they reinforce each other, because even when one layer is contained, the second continues to generate impact. And that makes the system significantly harder to neutralize than it appears at first glance. But systems like this are not built in isolation. They are shaped by incentives. And in Iran's case, The incentive structure is not complicated. It is built around one reality. The Strait of Hormuz is not just a geographic passage. It is one of the most important economic pressure points in the global system, because nearly a fifth of the world's oil supply passes through it, which means even small disruptions in this corridor do not stay regional. They translate almost immediately into global economic movement. That is where its value as leverage begins, not in full control, but in the ability to influence outcomes under pressure. For Iran, this creates a very specific kind of strategic option, because when a country operates under sanctions, isolation, or economic restriction, it doesn't respond symmetrically. It looks for asymmetry. And the Strait provides exactly that. A mechanism where relatively low-cost actions can generate disproportionately large effects. The tools involved are not sophisticated in the traditional sense. Naval mines, fast attack craft, drone systems, coastal missile platforms. None of these require the kind of investment associated with conventional power projection, but their impact is not measured in cost. It is measured in reaction, because disruption in the Strait immediately feeds into global systems that are highly sensitive to instability. Shipping insurance adjusts in real time. Transport routes are recalculated. Energy futures react before physical supply chains even change. Oil prices can spike on anticipation alone, which means the economic effects often begin before any sustained disruption even occurs. And that is what makes the leverage effective. Not prolonged control, but credible disruption. And credible disruption forces decision-making under uncertainty, because any attempt to fully remove Iran from the Strait would not remain a contained military operation. It would interact directly with global energy markets, inflation dynamics, and trade stability. In other words, the consequences would not stay local. They would spread. And that changes the threshold for action entirely. Because in strategic environments like this, power is not just measured by capability. It is measured by the cost imposed on others when that capability is challenged. And that is where Iran's leverage exists, not in absolute dominance, but in the ability to make escalation expensive enough to delay it, or reconsider it entirely. But there is one more layer that explains why this position is so resilient. And it has nothing to do with weapons or geography. It has to do with time. Because Iran's strategic posture is not something that emerged recently. It is the product of long-term pressure, repeated conflict, and institutional memory shaped over centuries. Iran is one of the oldest continuous state identities in the world. And that matters more than it appears at first glance. Because when a state endures across empires, invasions, and shifting regional orders, it develops a different relationship with time. Its strategic thinking is not built around short-term outcomes. It is built around survival across cycles of pressure. That creates a mindset where endurance becomes more important than decisive victory. Not because victory is unimportant, but because history teaches that pressure does not disappear. It returns in different forms. This perspective becomes clearer when looking at modern conflicts that shaped Iran's current doctrine. The Iran-Iraq War is the defining example. It was not a short engagement or a limited confrontation. It was a prolonged, attritional conflict fought under conditions of extreme imbalance. Iran faced a heavily supported opponent, sustained international pressure, and significant material limitations. In that environment, conventional advantage mattered less than endurance. And what emerged from that period was not a conventional military doctrine, but an asymmetric one. A system built around surviving stronger opponents rather than matching them directly. That logic became even more visible during the so-called tanker war phase of the conflict, where the Strait of Hormuz itself became part of the battlefield. Shipping lanes were disrupted. Oil transport was targeted indirectly. Pressure was applied not through direct confrontation, but through controlled instability. And critically, these methods were not improvised. They were tested in real conditions, refined through repetition, and absorbed into long-term strategic thinking, which is why the current posture cannot be understood as isolated behavior. It is the continuation of a framework that has been shaped over decades of pressure, a system designed not for short-term escalation, but for sustained relevance under constant uncertainty. And that is what makes it structurally persistent. Because once a strategy is proven under pressure, it does not disappear. It evolves. And in Iran's case, that evolution has been consistent. So when we look at the Strait of Hormuz today, we are not just looking at a narrow stretch of water. We are looking at a convergence point in the global system, where geography, military structure, economic sensitivity, and long-term strategic thinking all intersect in one confined space. And that intersection is what makes it so difficult to fundamentally change. Because this is not a situation built on a single source of power. It is a layered system, geography that cannot be relocated, a military structure designed to absorb pressure rather than collapse under it, economic dependencies that react instantly to instability, and a strategic culture shaped by long-term endurance under external pressure. Each layer reinforces the others, which means no single solution is enough on its own. And that is the core problem, because removing Iran from meaningful influence in this space is not a matter of applying force to one variable. It requires simultaneously overcoming every layer that sustains the balance: the physical environment, the operational structure, the economic consequences, and the historical logic behind how that system behaves under pressure. And when you put those together, the challenge stops being tactical. It becomes systemic. Because even if one layer is temporarily managed, the others continue to generate effects. Disruption in this corridor does not remain contained. It moves through energy markets almost immediately. It influences oil pricing. It affects transport costs. It feeds into inflation pressures across multiple economies at once, which means any attempt to significantly alter the balance here does not exist in isolation. It interacts with global stability in real time. And that is what makes the situation fundamentally complex. Not because control is absolute, but because the cost of changing it is distributed across the entire system. Because in the end, the question is not whether Iran can be challenged in the Strait of Hormuz. It can. The real question is whether it can be meaningfully removed from it, without triggering levels of disruption that extend far beyond the region itself. Because control in this context was never about ownership. It was about positioning. And positioning, once established in a system like this, does not depend on dominance. It depends on the ability to shape outcomes without requiring full control of the environment. That is why it persists, not because it is unbreakable, but because breaking it is not a localized decision. It is a global one. And that shifts the constraint entirely. Because the real limitation is not simply Iran's capability in the strait. It is the cost, economic, strategic, and political, of proving that capability wrong at scale. And in systems like this, the side that can impose costs without escalating beyond control is often the side that remains in place.